In life, some stories break us. Others remind us we can rise again. This is one of them. I'm Thomas Reed, and this is Behind Closed Doors. Michael Carter was once the kind of man people envied. Sharp suit, expensive watch, luxury car. He had it all. CEO of a thriving tech company, respected in business circles, feared by competitors. But behind the polished image was a man blinded by ambition and pride. For decades, Michael made ruthless decisions, cutting off anyone who stood in his way, including Emily, the woman he loved, pregnant with his child, discarded like she meant nothing. He told himself it was necessary. Success required sacrifice, but success is fragile. In less than a year, Michael's empire crumbled. A trusted partner betrayed him, embezzling millions. A media scandal destroyed his reputation overnight. Shareholders abandoned him. Clients sued him, and his so-called friends disappeared like smoke. Worse yet, the government froze his assets. His accounts, his properties, gone. He lost his penthouse, his cars, his access to the world he once ruled. But fate wasn't finished humiliating Michael Carter. He found himself living in a cramped motel room, eating instant noodles, wearing the same wrinkled suit for weeks. Former employees sneered at him in the streets. Old acquaintances crossed the road to avoid him. The man who once hosted galas was now begging for job interviews, rejected over and over, his name poisoned beyond repair. The final blow came when Michael suffered a heart attack on the cold floor of a public restroom in a run-down diner. Alone, forgotten, helpless. When he woke up in a hospital bed, stripped of dignity and fortune. Only one thing awaited him, rock bottom, but life had one last twist in store. Young doctor with calm eyes and quiet strength stood at his bedside. A man whose presence would change everything. Humiliation isn't always loud. Sometimes it creeps in quietly, like when Michael Carter stood in line at the crowded job center, wearing the same designer suit he once closed million-dollar deals in. The suit now hung loose on his thinning frame, stained at the collar, the fabric worn. The people in the line didn't care who he used to be. But one face did. Tommy McGill, a former employee, once fired by Michael with no compassion. Tommy spotted him and smirked, loud enough for others to hear. "Look at this. Mr. Millionaire, you applying for welfare now?" The snickers that followed sliced deeper than words. Michael clenched his fists and said nothing. Pride had no place here. His stomach growled. 2 days without a real meal. Every rejection letter, every slammed door brought him lower. But nothing prepared him for this. His phone buzzed with an automated message. Final notice. Eviction in 24 hours. His motel stay was over. His last sanctuary stripped away. Later that night, rain poured as Michael walked the streets with a single bag, soaked to the bone, shivering in his thin clothes. He passed luxury stores he once shopped at, now a ghost. Haunting familiar grounds. A teenager bumped into him, laughing, snatching the worn leather wallet from his hands. Michael chased him weakly, but exhaustion won. He collapsed on the cold sidewalk, chest tight, vision blurred. His body betrayed him. A familiar pain crushed his chest, worse than the first time. Darkness closed in. When he awoke, sterile white. Walls surrounded him. Machines beeped steadily beside his hospital bed. His head throbbed, body weak. Then he saw him again, the young doctor. Calm, focused, yet distant. His eyes studied Michael with unsettling familiarity, as if peeling away layers Michael thought hidden. "You're lucky to be alive," the doctor said. His voice was steady, but carried something deeper, a personal weight Michael couldn't place. Michael tried to speak, but shame suffocated him. "Rest," the doctor instructed, adjusting the IV line. Your body's been through hell. Michael nodded, closing his eyes, unaware that fate had just placed him inches from his greatest regret, his own son. The hospital smelled of antiseptic, the walls painted in a lifeless beige, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. Michael Carter lay in bed, frail and defeated, staring at the peeling ceiling tiles. Days blurred together. No visitors. No friends. No family. Just nurses checking vitals, whispering outside his door about the washed-up CEO who came in half dead from the street. Humiliation followed him even here. The young doctor returned daily, professional, calm, reserved. His badge read Dr. Ethan Blake, but Michael couldn't shake the strange familiarity behind the man's eyes. It unnerved him. Ethan never mentioned Michael's past, though it was obvious he knew. His face was too controlled, his politeness too measured, like someone holding back years of questions. On the third day, Michael finally spoke, voice raspy. You look familiar. Ethan's expression barely changed. A flicker of emotion, quickly buried. I get that sometimes, Ethan replied, adjusting Michael's fore without meeting his gaze. Silence stretched between them, heavy and uncomfortable. Later, that evening, Michael attempted to sit up, but his body betrayed him again, weakness flooding his limbs. The nurse rushed in, scolding him gently, reminding him he wasn't the man he used to be. His mind spiraled. The mighty Michael Carter, reduced to skin and bones, confined to a hospital bed, forgotten by the world. No board meetings. No penthouse. No applause. The bitter taste of regret burned his throat. On the fourth day, Ethan brought a small meal to Michael's bedside. The food was bland, but it was the first warm meal Michael had tasted in days. His hands trembled as he ate, pride cracking with every shaky spoonful. Ethan observed quietly, offering no pity, just patience. Why are you being kind to me? Michael finally asked. His voice cracked, the walls of arrogance faltering. Ethan paused, his eyes softening, but his words were guarded. Everyone deserves a second chance, even if they don't believe it yet. Michael's heart sank with the weight of those words. He didn't deserve kindness. He barely deserved life. But something about Ethan, his steady presence, his strange familiarity, it stirred something, buried deep within. Michael didn't know it yet, but his journey toward redemption had already begun. 2 weeks later, Michael was discharged from the hospital. His pockets were empty, his health still fragile, and his pride shattered. They gave him a cheap set of clothes and a cab voucher. That was it. No welcoming committee, no driver. Number 1 waiting outside. He walked the streets alone, the city unrecognizable from this angle. Towering buildings mocked him. Familiar restaurants and office towers brought painful flashbacks of the man he used to be. At a street corner, he passed a digital billboard flashing an article. Michael Carter's empire collapse. From billionaire to nothing. People stopped to read, laughing at the fall from grace. A man in a business suit even pointed at him, whispering, "Isn't that him?" Pathetic. The sting was unbearable. Michael spent the next day sleeping in a homeless shelter, lining up for free meals among strangers who smelled of despair. His body ached from the cold, his mind spiraling with regret. At night, he lay awake, reliving his mistakes, abandoning Emily, never meeting his child, sacrificing everything for success that now meant nothing. But one face stayed with him. Ethan. Despite his guarded nature, Ethan visited the shelter after his shifts, under the pretense of checking on discharged patients. He brought soup, blankets, sometimes small talk. It wasn't friendship yet. It was duty. Or so Michael thought. They sat on a park bench one chilly evening. steam rising from the styrofoam cups of coffee Ethan had brought. Michael sipped slowly, hands trembling. "Why do you keep showing up?" Michael asked, eyes narrowing with suspicion. Ethan shrugged, but his gaze softened. "Maybe I believe people can change," he replied, his tone carrying hidden pain. Michael scoffed. "People like me? You don't know half the things I've done." Ethan stared at him for a long moment, lips pressed together, as if holding back the truth. "Maybe I know more than you think," he finally said, rising to leave. The words hung in the air like smoke, confusing and heavy. Michael watched him walk away, his heart battling suspicion and a flicker of something unfamiliar hope. The streets were the great equalizer. It didn't matter if you were once a billionaire or a nobody. Out here, everyone was invisible. Michael Carter learned that fast. Cold nights blurred into endless days of rejection. He begged for loose change outside stores he used to own shares in. Security guards pushed him away. Store clerks glared with suspicion. His name, once respected, meant nothing now. His face just another worn, forgotten silhouette. One rainy afternoon, he stood outside a coffee shop, shivering under the awning, hoping for spare coins. Inside, suited executives sipped lattes, typing on laptops, the life he once ruled. A woman recognized him through the window. Her eyes widened, then narrowed in disgust. "Michael Carter?" She mouthed, laughing with friends. One pulled out a phone, snapping a photo of his drenched, hollow figure. Humiliation burned through him like acid. Later, Michael huddled under a freeway overpass, soaked to the bone, his stomach empty for the third day straight. Hunger gnawed at him worse than the cold. That night, he almost gave up. His body ached, his spirit was broken, his mind numb, but fate wasn't done. A familiar voice cut through the storm of his thoughts. "You look worse than last week," Ethan remarked, approaching with a bag of food and a blanket. Michael scowled, pride clashing with desperation. But the smell of hot food shattered his defenses. "Why? Why are you doing this?" Michael asked, his voice cracking. Weak from hunger. Ethan sat beside him on the cold concrete, handing over the food. "Because I've seen what life does to people when they fall," Ethan replied quietly. His eyes carried a storm of emotions. Pain, understanding, and something deeper Michael couldn't place. Michael devoured the food, warmth returning to his frozen limbs. For the first time in weeks, his body stopped shaking. Ethan pulled out an old, weathered jacket from his backpack. "Take it," he insisted. Michael hesitated, shame crawling under his skin. But survival beat pride. He accepted it, avoiding Ethan's eyes. The young doctor smiled faintly, standing up to leave. "People change, Michael," he said softly. "Even you." As Ethan disappeared into the night, Michael clutched the jacket. Unfamiliar warmth spreading through his chest. A stranger's kindness or something more? The next time Ethan found Michael, it was outside an abandoned building near the industrial district, shivering, coughing, wrapped in the worn jacket Ethan had given him. His eyes were sunken, his face gaunt, skin pale from hunger and exposure. But what remained intact, stubbornly intact, was Michael's pride. Ethan approached with quiet footsteps, holding 2 paper bags of food and a thermos of hot coffee. "It's getting colder." "You won't last another week out here," Ethan warned. Setting the food down beside him, Michael's lips twisted into a bitter smirk. "You keep showing up like some bleeding heart charity case," he rasped. Ethan crouched beside him, unfazed. "Maybe I know what it's like to have no one," he replied, his tone sharper than usual. Michael's gaze flickered with suspicion. There it was again, the hidden edge behind Ethan's calm exterior. Like this was personal. Ethan reached into his pocket, pulling out a folded business card. "There's a program." Transitional housing. Job placement for people who fell hard. He held the card out. They'll take you in if you want it. Michael hesitated, glaring at the card like it was poisoned. "I'm not charity," Michael snapped. His voice cracked, pride unraveling. "You're freezing to death," Ethan countered. "You're starving. You're sleeping in gutters." His eyes softened. "This isn't about charity. It's about survival." Michael's jaw clenched. His mind flashed with memories. Corner offices, luxury cars, expensive scotch now replaced by hunger pangs, ridicule, and icy pavement. The humiliation stacked like bricks on his chest. He hated what he'd become, but more than that, he hated that Ethan was right. With trembling fingers, Michael snatched the card. The name of the shelter blurred behind his tears. Ethan stood, his expression unreadable, watching Michael's walls crumble piece by piece. "Take the help," Ethan said quietly, turning to leave. "No one gets back up alone." For a long moment, Michael stared at the card, torn between anger and desperation. Finally, defeated by his own weakness, he shoved it into his pocket dot. As Ethan disappeared down the street, Michael exhaled for the first time in weeks. There was a sliver of hope, and the unfamiliar ache of human connection. He wasn't sure if he deserved either. The shelter was colder than Michael expected, not in temperature, but in atmosphere. Dot metal bunks crammed side by side. The sour stench of unwashed bodies lingered in the air. Men with hollow eyes and broken spirits shuffled quietly, some muttering to themselves, others staring into nothingness. Michael Carter, once the name on skyscrapers, now shared a bunk with the forgotten. The intake worker barely glanced at him. Name? His throat tightened. Saying his name felt like exposing a wound. "Michael Carter," he mumbled. The worker scribbled it down, showing no reaction. Another lost soul, another statistic. The first night was brutal. His thin mattress reeked of mildew. Fights broke out in the hallway. Shouting, glass shattering, security dragging people out. Michael clutched his bag, shrinking into the sheets. Waves of humiliation crashing over him. Sleep never came. The next morning, they served watery oatmeal and stale bread. Michael, weak and starving, forced it down, each bite a reminder of how far he'd fallen. But Ethan showed up as promised. Not with grand gestures, just quiet presence. He brought coffee, real coffee, and sat beside Michael in the shelter's crowded cafeteria. "You survived your first night," Ethan remarked, offering the cup. Michael's hands trembled as he accepted it. The warmth seeped into his fingers. Small comfort in a sea of hopelessness. This place. Michael's voice cracked. "It breaks you." Ethan's eyes darkened, his guard dropping for a brief second. "It nearly broke me once too," he admitted softly, then quickly shifted the subject. The confession lingered, unsettling Michael. Ethan wasn't just some charity case. He'd been through hell too. Later that day, Michael joined the shelter's job placement orientation. Sitting among addicts, ex-convicts, and lost souls, shame coiled around him like a noose. When it was his turn to speak, the counselor asked, "What's your work experience?" A bitter laugh escaped his lips. "I used to own companies. Now, I can't even get hired to mop floors." The room stayed silent, his humiliation complete. But that night, as Michael lay in his bunk, Ethan's words echoed in his mind. No one gets back up alone. Maybe, just maybe, he didn't have to face this alone. The mop bucket sloshed as Michael pushed it down the sterile hallway of the downtown office building. The same kind of building he used to own floors in. Now, he scrubbed its bathrooms. The smell of bleach clung to his hands. His knees ached from hours of crouching, cleaning toilets stained by strangers. His once pristine hands that signed million-dollar Contracts, now raw and cracked. God, it was humiliating beyond words. The other janitors barely spoke to him. To them, he was the awkward new guy with a chip on his shoulder. The supervisors barked orders, showed no patience, and made sure Michael understood. Out here, no one cared about his past glories. His first paycheck was laughable. Enough for cheap meals, barely enough for rent in the shelter program's shared housing. But it was something, scraps of dignity in a world that had forgotten him. After his shift, Ethan waited outside. The young doctor leaned against a street lamp, coffee in hand, watching Michael limp down the sidewalk. "You made it through day one," Ethan observed, offering the coffee. Michael took it, exhaustion in his eyes. "Scrubbing toilets wasn't on my 5-year plan," he muttered bitterly. Ethan chuckled softly. "Neither was sleeping under bridges, I bet." Despite himself, Michael cracked a faint smile. The first in weeks. As days turned into weeks, the pattern repeated. Grueling shifts, aching muscles, late-night talks with Ethan. Their conversations stayed surface level, but a quiet understanding grew between them. Ethan never judged. He never reminded Michael of his failures, even when strangers did. One evening, outside the shelter, a group of former colleagues walked by, laughing as they spotted Michael in his janitor uniform. "Is that Carter?" "Scrubbing." "Floors now?" One jeered, snapping photos for social media. Michael's face flushed with humiliation. Rage simmered beneath the surface, but he kept his head down. Ethan stood beside him, unmoving, protective. His eyes burned with quiet fury, but he let Michael handle it, respecting his pride. They sat on a bench, the city lights flickering in the distance. "You still think people change?" Michael asked, his voice low. Ethan's reply was calm, but layered with meaning. "Some people, they just forget who they really are. Sometimes rock bottom is how they remember." Michael fell silent, the words cutting deep, because somewhere, buried beneath the humiliation, a spark remained. The small victories didn't last. For a brief moment, Michael believed things were stabilizing. The janitor job, the shelter program, even the cautious friendship with Ethan. But life, as he should have known, had other plans. 3 weeks into the job, Michael showed up to work and found his supervisor waiting, clipboard in hand, expression cold. "We've had complaints," the man announced. "You're too slow, sloppy." Michael's chest tightened. He'd been trying harder than he ever had, but the exhaustion, the malnutrition, the months on the street, they left scars that didn't heal overnight. "I'm doing my best," Michael insisted, voice strained. The supervisor sneered. "Your best isn't enough." He thrust a pink slip into Michael's hand. "We're done." Just like that. Gone. Humiliation wrapped around him like chains. Fired from cleaning floors. From scrubbing toilets. It didn't get lower then. This. Back at the shelter, shame weighed so heavy Michael could barely breathe. His pride, what little remained, shattered completely. That night, he didn't meet Ethan on the usual bench. He wandered instead, down dark alleys, temptation whispering in his ear, the easy way out. But Ethan found him, sitting alone on the steps of an old church, head in his hands. Michael didn't look up as Ethan approached. His voice cracked under. The weight of defeat. "I can't do this. I'm done." Ethan sat beside him, silent for a long moment. Then softly the young doctor spoke, exposing for the first time his own scars. "I grew up without a father." His voice trembled slightly, the mask cracking. "He abandoned us before I was born. My mother struggled, food stamps, shelters, humiliation." Michael's heart twisted. Ethan continued, eyes distant, voice raw. "I used to fantasize about finding him, asking why I wasn't enough to stay." His fists clenched. "But sometimes people break, and they run." Silence fell between them, heavy with unspoken truths. Michael's throat tightened, a lump of shame and sorrow forming. Ethan's next words hit like a blade to the chest. You don't have to be him, Michael. For the first time, Michael sensed the cracks in Ethan's walls, pain, abandonment, but also hope. The pieces began to connect, but not fully. Not yet. Michael exhaled, the fight within him reigniting, faint but real. Maybe redemption was still possible. The morning air was colder than usual, but Michael didn't care. For the first time in months, he woke up with a purpose. Not pride, not anger, but something different. Maybe it was Ethan's words still echoing in his mind. Maybe it was the way Ethan looked at him, like he wasn't beyond saving Dot after losing the janitor job. Michael could have disappeared. Many did, but not this time. He walked into a community center recommended by the shelter, his heart pounding. They offered vocational training, basic construction work, manual labor. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. The instructor barely glanced at his resume. His past didn't matter here, just his willingness to sweat, to struggle, to learn. Michael signed up. Days turned into grueling weeks. Heavy lifting, early mornings, calloused hands. His body ached constantly, but he pushed through. The old Michael, the polished executive, faded away, replaced by someone raw, real, and determined. And through it all, Ethan remained. They met often, usually over cheap coffee or on quiet park benches. Their conversations grew deeper. No more surface-level politeness. Ethan opened up stories of his single mother's hardships, the nights they went hungry, the resentment he carried for the father he never met. Michael listened, guilt twisting inside him, though Ethan still hadn't revealed the full truth. One evening, after a long shift, Michael found Ethan waiting outside the center, holding 2 sandwiches. Construction suits you, Ethan joked, eyeing Michael's dirt-streaked clothes. Michael smirked, exhaustion weighing down his shoulders. Never thought I'd be proud of blisters. They ate in silence for a while, the city lights flickering in the distance. Ethan's expression turned serious. You're changing, he observed. I can see it. Michael shrugged. I had to, or die out there. Ethan's eyes softened, pride and sadness blending together. Some people never change. You're proving them wrong. The weight of those words hung heavy. Michael didn't know it yet, but Ethan's pride wasn't just for a struggling stranger. It was personal. Michael was unknowingly earning back the respect of the son he never raised, one painful step at a time. The construction site was chaos. Michael wiped sweat from his brow as machinery roared, dust clouds rising around him. His hands were blistered, his body exhausted, but for the first time in months, he felt purposed out until everything came crashing. Down. At lunch break, a news crew arrived. A journalist, recognizing Michael, shoved a microphone in his face. Michael Carter, former CEO of Carter Enterprises, now reduced to a laborer. Care to comment on your fall from grace? The cameras clicked. Former co-workers jeered in the background. The same people who once envied him now reveled in his downfall. Michael's chest tightened, humiliation burning through him. He tried to walk away, but the reporter pressed on. Is this your redemption arc, or just the final chapter of failure? His co-workers whispered, their eyes filled with ridicule. Michael's throat closed up. His past clung to him like chains. No matter how far he ran, the ghost of his old life found him. But then, Ethan appeared. Stepping between Michael and the cameras, Ethan's presence silenced the scene. His eyes burned with quiet intensity. That's enough, Ethan said firmly to the reporter. You got your story. The journalist hesitated, then backed off, sensing the tension. Michael stood frozen, his pride in tatters, his heart pounding. As the crowd dispersed, Michael slumped onto a stack of wooden beams, defeated. Ethan sat beside. Him, the usual guarded calm gone, replaced by raw emotion. You let them define you, Ethan said quietly. You let their version of your story own you. Michael's eyes filled with tears. What story is left? I'm a failure. A disappointment. His voice cracked. A man who abandoned everything. Ethan inhaled sharply, his expression shifting. The moment had come. You didn't just abandon your company, Ethan revealed, voice trembling. You abandoned me. Michael's world tilted. His pulse roared in his ears. What? What are you saying? He whispered. Already fearing the answer, Ethan's eyes glistened, the walls around him finally shattering. I'm your son, Michael. His voice broke with years of buried pain. The boy you left behind, the one you never looked for. Time froze. The final crushing humiliation wasn't public disgrace. It was realizing the man who'd been saving him all along was his greatest unfinished chapter. Michael's soul fractured under the weight of truth. But somewhere within the wreckage, the first fragile seeds of redemption stirred. The silence after Ethan's confession was deafening. Michael's mind spiraled. Flashes of boardrooms, luxury cars, stock prices, all meaningless now. Because seated beside him wasn't just a stranger offering second chances. It was the boy he'd failed. The man he never knew, his son. Michael's voice cracked under the crushing weight of realization. Ethan. I didn't know. Pain flickered across Ethan's face. Years of abandonment reflected in his tired eyes. You didn't want to know, Ethan whispered. Mom, she never blamed you, but I did. The words sliced through Michael's chest. He saw himself clearly. Now, the ambition that devoured him, the choices that left ashes in their wake. Michael's hands shook. His voice faltered, stripped of pride. I wasn't ready to be a father. I thought success would fix everything. But I lost it all. I lost you. Ethan exhaled, his walls crumbling completely. I spent my whole life hating the idea of you. Then I found you, broken, hopeless, and I couldn't hate you anymore. His voice softened. Because I saw myself in your ruin. Tears welled. In Michael's eyes, raw regret spilling out. I can't undo what I've done, Michael admitted, voice trembling. But I want to know you. I want to be better. For a long moment, Ethan stayed silent. The years of pain, disappointment, and buried hope swirling between them. Then, cautiously, like testing fragile glass, Ethan nodded. Redemption isn't words, Michael. It's action. It's showing up. Michael's heart pounded with fragile hope. I'll show up, he promised. For as long as it takes. The two sat side by side, scarred, but breathing, the first cracks of light breaking through the darkness. In the months that followed, Michael rebuilt, not fortunes, but trust. He volunteered at shelters, found steady work, attended counseling. It was grueling, humbling, but this time he wasn't alone. Ethan stayed, cautious, protective, but present. And though the road was long, filled with stumbles and scars, father and son walked it together. For Michael Carter, redemption wasn't a grand comeback. It was small, steady steps toward the only legacy that ever mattered. Family. If this story moved you, follow us and turn on the bell. Here, we share raw, real stories, heartbreak, redemption, and the fight to rise again. Don't miss what's next.